Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. I say it so many times, and I want you to hear it, that the process you see here. You gathered in a room to watch a man in a chair channel. There'll come a day when that will never happen. Ever. The man has taken 20 years to practice tuning into a certain radio station that all of you will have eventually. The beauty of the future of this planet is that the higher the consciousness, the more the coherence with the creative source. Now, what you're hearing now, dear ones, is the human being in his corporealness having the ability to step aside with his consciousness and allow the pineal, through his higher self, to talk to the other side of the veil in a coherent way. Coherence. That process may seem unusual. And you'll gather in a room. And from human to human to human who will do this process, it's different. Depending upon their filters and the corporeal consciousness blocks, depending upon the synaptic brain and what it will allow, will determine the authenticity of the channel. Your discernment is needed on all of it. All of it. Now, what I just said to you, this is an ancient method of talking and communicating to the creative source. Indigenous old did it. And it may not look like what you're doing today. The indigenous old did it. And they did it through different kinds of messages that came in different kinds of ways in their own traditions. But they came. Some of the scriptures that you hold so dear, that are just dripping with the love of God, coming from certain disciples of the Masters, written in prisons, were channeled. And what you have in common, and we've said this so many times, is the Word of God is really the Word of men and women. It has always been this way. But it goes back. Every single human being, when they awaken and they reach a certain age, they have a realization at some level that they're not alone. And sometimes in its infancy, a child will invent a friend. And that friend will be with them and they'll converse with them. The child will have a friend that protects them from what's under the bed. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about your intuitive self and what you have in there? You expect help, don't you? You know there's another force, don't you? You know there's benevolence. You know there's protection. You know there's love. And so humanity goes in this direction. And it always did, and it always has. And the first thing that a holy man will do in his pursuit is try to break the barrier and get the messages. And sometimes they're practical. When will it rain? Where are the animals for the food? And you'll tap into the information that will give you the intuition to give the correct message. And they will be correct. It's been there forever. And what we want to tell you is that in the process that you are beginning now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about change tonight. In this process, you become closer to what you see here. The intuition that you will develop will be the key. If you could define channeling, it would be a constant stream of open intuition through the pineal, through the higher self to the other side of the veil that is able to be translated in a linear form. That's channeling. Imagine intuition that it's not fleeting, that stays there, that you can look at and you can examine and you can understand. That's what it's going to be. There'll come a day when there'll never be a man in a chair, and no one will come to a meeting to listen to channeling because you've got it for yourself. And the beauty of that is two things. You should hear this. Number one, the channeling is for you personal. That's one section. And the other part of the channeling is for all humanity. And all humanity is going to get the same message. The personal is going to be just for you. And that is where the common sense and the wisdom barrier and all the things that we've been talking about will start to occur. It's going to be instinctual. You're going to be born on the planet and you're going to know it. And it's going to be carried over akashically and chemically from one human to another. The babies will be born knowing who they are. And by the time they are grown up enough to make decisions of their own, those decisions will be based in wisdom of the past. You're not going to need channelers. It's a new paradigm. And this channel that I'm giving you is no different than the one that I'd given recently, which I talked about where humanity can go. And we always get the questions from human beings. So many questions. How can I be part of it? How long is it going to take? When will it occur? Yes, yes, and yes. You are part of it. You're in the room, aren't you? Do you care about what's being said? Do you believe it's being channeled? What's your attitude? When somebody says drop into the core and feel God inside you, do you know what they're talking about? Or is it just nice language? Because at the core of you, the higher self is always there to meet you. It always is. Whether or not you find the wherewithal to clear the fear to get there is your issue. Human being, there's work to do, isn't there? If this is so important to the galaxy, Kryon, why all of this stuff around it? Why do we have to discover something in the dark, seemingly? Why do we have to jump through hoops and get rid of the fear and find out who we are and all of these things? Why don't you just show up and make it happen? It is the love of God to you. That's the answer. You've got to do it as a group. You've got to do it through the human brain and through the intuition. You've got to do it in a corporeal sense on a planet for it to work. You see, God is biased in love. You're not. You've got to work at it. And if you come to this place where there is no more war, and you come to this place where you don't need a channeler, and you come to all of these places, you have done it because it made sense and because it was worth it to you, and that carries far more weight than a biased source called God. Did you know that? Planet after planet has done it. It changes the galaxy. The galaxy changes the universe. There are some hidden things here. You knew that. Concentrate on the one at hand. The next step is you finding more about you. More on this later. And so it is. A magnetic service. I used the expression that my partner steps aside. In the information given this day that I have channeled to my partner, you learn there are many parts of you. The part that steps aside, the corporeal survival brain, allows the portal that is the pineal, it is the intuitive part, to become bigger. Channeling is nothing more than a wide open intuition, allowing for a full stream of information in a non-linear way coming from source. Through the last 25 years, what my partner has been able to do is to linearize this through agreements and practice so that it sounds like we are coming to you normal human speech. Using my partner's intellect, his abilities to speak his language, his vocabulary, all of that, I want you to pay attention. Channeling uses the abilities of the human being. It is not supernatural. All channeling that has ever been accurate and true has come through a human being in this way. The highest scriptures of the planet written in this way, channeled they are. The most wisdom that you've ever had from shamanic energies has been channeled in this way, using the human being's culture, experience, language, and the mechanics of their body. It is an honoring, therefore, of humanity that it is delivered in this way. Do you understand, dear ones, that if what you call God wanted to talk to you, really, in a way that would frighten you or show the magnificence of God, there are other ways. But that is not the way the benevolence works of the God that's inside of you. It always comes through a human being. It always comes through you. You might even say that synchronicity and co-creation is like mini channeling. You open enough to get the messages that you need for you at the time. And we have said this before. So what you hear today and what is being said today, coming through the human being today, even though he steps aside, is about you. We have gone through the lineage of what is happening on this planet so many times for you. Starting in 2011, talking about what was going to happen in 2012. In 2012, talking about what happened in 2013. And now, you sit in the middle of 2014. The message today, I would like to tell you who it's for. Not just those in this room. The who being a generic whom. It is for those who have awakened spiritually to a point where they believe what they're hearing is true. For those who are interested in the God inside and have invested their time and effort and intent to find it. That's who this is for. And in the old soul category, that would then include you. Not all old souls are awakened. And not all those who are awakened are old souls. But when you get both together, it's magic. Those who would sit in a room like this for the duration that you have to listen to the information, no matter what your chronological age will be, are generally old souls. And the magic is that the information is taken in and acted upon quicker than not. So this is why I sit in front of you. I would like to tell you more about this shift. We're going to label this particular channel the attributes of change. I'm going to start by describing the timing of all things spiritual. You might wonder if Spirit coordinates things with human calendars. It would appear that we do. We talk about 2012, we talk about 2013. I will now reveal to you that these are simply linear compartments that we put things in because this is what you do. It's not always accurate. We talk in generalizations when it comes to the clock for many reasons. There are no absolute timings. Things are driven by human consciousness. The kinds of things we speak of, the attributes of the shift, are driven by the timing of human consciousness shift. And that is unknown by anyone. The parameters all fall within the potential clock that you have. But it's not always that way. Now, what I mean by that is that in the middle of what we perhaps thought would happen and be cleared by a certain date may be faster or take longer, depending upon what happens on the planet and the free choice that you have. Now, we tell you this so that you will not then someday take a look at prophecy or hold readers to their word that something would happen here or there, they're a year off. You should know that the best reader on the planet can only read the now. And the now is the potential of tomorrow, not the absolute of tomorrow. And so there is what we will call wiggle room for a lot of things. We said that 2013 was the year of calibration. It actually started in 2011. There are many of you who have a longer process than others. It is part of your human design, your timing cycle, that things would take a great deal of time. And some of you are fast. Again, humanity is very, very varied. And so this will then explain, well, some had this happen and it took forever. And others had something happen like a flash in the pan. Each human being is unique. But the process of this shift is generic. And that is to say, all humanity is involved at a certain time in a certain way. Now let us take a look at the timing of the shift. The absolutes, guided by the ancient traditions and also the astronomy of today, center it around the precession of the equinoxes. And this is why you celebrated the shift when you did. It is why the meetings took place that should have taken place when they did. Because no one knows the true parameters of how human consciousness is going to react to the things around it. What I want to tell you is this. You're sitting here in July of 2014. And I want to tell you, dear ones, this is where it begins. Now, you should have known that if you wanted to look at the potentials of the astronomical attributes in the sky, if you want to look at the astrology, if you want to take a look at the energies put upon the earth and to you individually, collectively, at this point in time, in July, you're going to see something, a confluence of energy that would help the process of clearing and new beginnings. It would have been convenient, would it not, to say that 2014 was the end of the problem. The 2013 December 31st, it was all over. But you're smarter than that, aren't you? You know that your calendar does not necessarily correspond with the energies of the planet. All this to say that some of the issues of 2013 dragged right into the first 6 months of this year. And now, for the first time, the clearing actually has begun. So this is the time where we can start talking, perhaps, about change. It's going to be simple. Perhaps the lecture today was complex. This is simple. I want you to take a look at what is going on. We have described this shift before, and we have told you it is very much like retuning into a radio station which has slightly changed its broadcast frequency. And so you're going to have to go over and turn the knob to center it up with the broadcast. We've told you that almost everything is going to feel a little off. Now, depending upon the human being and the setup of the human being, the life lessons, the karma perhaps which was not dropped or dropped, will depend upon the setup of how you're affected. So in this particular case, if you have 100 people, there will be 100 ways that you feel it, and they may be different. But this little off could be in your spirituality, it could be in your relationship, it could be at work, it could be health. It could be how centered you feel in your body. It depends upon this, dear ones, how close is your walk with the spiritual side inside you. How close is that walk? And I will tell you, the closer that walk is, the more you're feeling it. The radio station has moved and it's just a little off. You now are not hearing the music clearly. It's just a little distorted and in the distance, and you're going to have to retune to it. Now that is a metaphor. Don't take it any further than that. And that is now starting to shift. Change. What do you do with it? How do you retune to it? And what is the process? It's difficult to explain, is it not? To 100 human beings, which are all very different, what each one is supposed to do. And we can't. But we can describe what is happening so that you can cognize it and start to work on yourself to center it up. It's interesting how human beings react to change, but specifically this change. Because there's an attribute of this shift that I want to tell you, which is unique on the planet and never has happened before. We have told you about energies coming and going. We have said there's this happening, there's this happening. We've told you about shifts that astrology brings in. You've never had this, dear ones, never. It's a new energy, so new that it's never going to go back. And that means to all of you one thing, and I want you to pay attention. There are several points of this message that I want you to get, and this is one. It will never be the same. Never. And there are human beings instinctively, intuitively waiting for it to return. Because it always has. And it isn't going to. Perhaps in this room or listening, there are healers. Perhaps there are readers, mediums, channelers. who are trying to wait it out. They realize that they have lost something, and they're not really certain what, but it doesn't feel the same. The results are often so different from their readings or their healings that some have actually stopped for a while and are waiting for it to return to normal. And there is no more normal. It is not coming back. And so the invitation should be clear. Get up and find out how to tune to a vibration which you have never tuned to before, but which is there waiting for you to tune to it. Waiting for you, expects it. This is what you were designed for. Your biology is shouting at you. The innate of your body wants you to feel it and know what to do and how to make it operate. So much of it is intuitive consciousness, things that you cannot identify and label to your satisfaction because they don't fit into a numbered list. Intent. Ceremony. It's different for all of you. But it wants to pull upon each one of you as you start to realign to it. This is difficult for a human being to understand. You're so used to pushing the rock uphill that there is something now that is waiting for you, and when you discover it, you'll click right into it and it's back. It's not back, it's just that you are now there where it is. What's interesting, and let me talk about light workers. There are 3 basic reactions that are happening right now to old souls and light workers, specifically in what you would call light work. The healers, the mediums, the intuitives, the channelers. 3 basic reactions, and they're very, very human. You can put yourself in whatever category you want. Number 1 category, you can't do it. You don't know how, it's too hard, it's not working anymore, so you're going to quit. You may go to another part of light working. You're still going to help human beings, and there's no judgment. You just know you can't do it. Perhaps it's not something you want to do. So you walk away from perhaps decades of doing one thing in order to do something similar that you think is understandable because what you've been doing is not. It's happening. In that, there are variances of degrees. Some will simply alter it a little bit. Some will actually stop and turn their back on God because it's too hard. Maybe some of you know them. The second reaction, how human, complain. A steady stream of complaints gives you an actionable thing to do without having to change. And you'll do it for the rest of your life. It used to be this way. I don't know why it isn't now. I'm trying, I'm wishing, I'm hoping, I'm waiting, I'm complaining, and I always will. And you know I'm right. That's their way of solving the puzzle. A puzzle that has no solution that they can see. Complaining is easier. And the third one, and there's only 3, are the old souls and the light workers who are sitting not knowing what to do and being frustrated. And maybe that's you. There are very few who have grasped it and moved that dial and are complacent with the change. And that's because it has only just begun. It took till July to clear. Now the energy that is coming is commensurate to your intuitive approach to find that station. Did you understand that? In other words, there is a benevolent energy pulling you toward the truth of how to work with it. And every single one of you have a unique energy that's doing that. It's beautiful. What a system that it knows your name. It knows all about the Akash and what you've been through and how many lifetimes you've been and what you're drawn to and where you'll go. What you're called to and where your interests are. It is a new paradigm of dealing with spirit where it knows you. Where there's a handshake you never had before. And where you'll know where that new station is and you'll know the handshake and you're right where you belong. This is far more personal than it's ever been before. There are mediums and healers and intuitives and channelers that simply read and intuit and channel and heal. And it's been something they do. It's never been personal. And now it can be. Imagine going to a level where each one of these things you do, you'll feel that higher self of you who knows you in touch with you. You'll know you're in the groove. This is new. Now is when the change can begin. You might want to take a look at your astrology. You might want to take a look at the planetary aspects. You might want to take a look at even what the ancients have said. And in the process, you'll know what I'm speaking of. There is a clearing here. This is really the beginning of what could have been in 2014 in January. It just took a little longer. I'm not going to get into the attributes that are happening on the planet. I want to concentrate on you. We don't have a lot of advice. Only to give you the parameters of the fact that the clearing begins now and there's nothing wrong with you if you haven't cleared it yet. And if you've been frustrated, welcome to the club. Because humanity, light workers, and old souls right now are all in this bag. Very few can raise their hands and say, I've figured it out. Because they haven't. I want you to be patient, dear ones. I want you to see this as the beginning of an opening. Now, here is the first advice we have for change. Your body has a way of working, and it always has worked this way. When there is an imbalance, you work on balancing. Easy. But that means you work on bringing it back to where it was. So the intuitive, instinctive thing for the human to do with all change is to try somehow to bring it back to normal. Even if you move your house, you create the same kind of room you had in the last house. Your habits are the same, and you try to reconfigure who you are to the new house. You change professions, jobs, whatever. You try to fit it into the groove that you understand and that you're comfortable in. But it's not going to be that way. You are going to have to redefine normal. And that means it's not coming back. It's not about rebalancing. It's about going someplace else, literally, in your consciousness and creating a new normal. I want to give you an example of this and how difficult it is. Let us say that you are a world-class surgeon and you work in hospitals and you know what you're doing. And all your life, all you have done in that profession is to help people and save their lives. And this is your passion. You come to the hospital and there are the tools and there's the technology. There's the electronics, there's the mechanics, all of these things. There's the medicine that you understand in order for you to operate on a patient and save their life. One day you wake up and a shift has occurred. You go to the hospital and the tools are different. The electronics are different. You don't know what turns it on now. You don't know how to operate it, calibrate it. The tools are an odd shape. And to make things worse, just when you've tried to figure them out, and you have, you wake up the next day and they changed again. And this is the metaphor of the spiritual healer on this planet who has used the tools of spirit, their intuition, their pineal, and all of the things that they understand so well, the feelings that they have, the energy they have, only to show up, sit in front of another human being, and there's nothing there. You don't have the energy, you don't have the other markers, to use that word, that let you read them and heal them. So here's what I want you to figure out. Here's what truly is going on. There is I'm going to call it a consistency of frequency. You leave the room today and you may get into a certain kind of car. And you're comfortable with your car because you know where everything is. Let's say that you leave the room tomorrow and it's another car. You leave it the next day and it's another car. There would be a frustration, would there not? But here's what I'm telling you. Here's what I want you to understand. Dear ones, this is a simple metaphor. It's the best we have. In the car example, there are consistencies you can count on. The brake is always in the same place. The accelerator is always in the same place. The steering wheel is always in the same place. The things you got to figure out is where are the gears? How do they work? Where's the windshield wiper and the lights? And once you have the peripherals figured out, you can drive it just as well. Imagine, however, that every day that you have a new car, this new car you have to get used to is better than the last one. It's more elegant. It's more comfortable. It lets you drive on the road so much better than you ever had before. But there's a consistency. There's three kinds of people. One who will immediately see the issue and they'll quit. I don't want to learn to drive another car. The second one will complain. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. After get in car after car and don't understand any of them. And the third kind who will look at it and say, I see the steering wheel's in the same place. I see the gas is in the same place. Now, where is the windshield wiper? I'll figure it out. Which one of those are you? Spirit has given a consistency, and that's the best I can tell you. So that when you get to the place where you understand the minutia of the change, truly, the driving force, the majority, will be identical to what you're used to. And it'll all work the same. So the surgeon is smart. He's figured it out. He walks into the hospital Because now he knows that every time he figures out the new tools are going to be better, he's going to save more lives. Now he can hardly wait. He said, I can realign to this. It's only going to take me a moment because I figured it out. The electronics, all I have to do is find out where the new on button is. The tools are shaped a little different because they've improved themselves. All I have to do is figure out what the improvements are. And I can hardly wait. Do you see the attitude difference? Now, who are you? Which one are you? And the only admonition in this shift, in these changes that are only just beginning for you, don't try to figure them out. Because just as soon as you think you did, they're going to move on you. How is it a human being can get used to constant change? Where the thing that you were most satisfied with before was consistency of operation, and now every time you show up, it's a little different. It's a big hurdle. It's a new paradigm. I want you to follow the logic of this. In a new earth, in a new planet, you really think you're going to get into an ascension status when things remain the same? You think we're going to take you to another level and it's just going to sit there forever? You are now on a path of consistent change. The children know all about it. They're ready for it. Today's young people expect it. It doesn't bother them at all. Light worker, what about you? I present this information so you'll be comfortable. I know you can do it. Watch for consistency of operation. With the changes being in what you would call the minutia around it. A reader is always a reader, a healer is always a healer, a channeler is always a channeler, and their tools are getting better. That's the message of the day. There come a time when we'll start describing the tools. Not now. I want you to get used to the shift and the change and what it means. And remember, don't look for anything to return to normal. Normal changes every day when you open your eyes. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. The pendulum of reality swings yet again into my corner. And there is an element of disbelief. In a group of old souls, there is always this. They say it's too easy. Some will say it's too easy to fake. And so we say this to you before we begin this discussion. It's about love. That's what it's about. It always has been and it always will be. And it's not the love that you think. There is a force in the universe even your astronomers have recognized and seen, identified, and they call it intelligent design. Because the universe itself is biased. It's biased into creativeness. It's biased in life creation. It's biased in love. There is purpose for everything. Astronomers, science, physicists, they want to see complete and total neutrality within all things, and they don't find it. And that's one of the things we want to discuss, the power that is starting to become yours in the understanding of energies around you which you have never identified as energies that specifically are what we're going to call informational. This is one of the first multi-dimensional channelings of a series, starting to explain to you in a better fashion concepts that have been misunderstood or not explained at all, in order to start you thinking about what you can do. And that is the purpose. It's a big distance between the nucleus and the electron haze. If you could go with me to the smallest of the small, you'd find an enormous amount of emptiness. Physicists will tell you that most of you are made of nothing. And it's only because they just don't see what's in the dark. And the multidimensional truth is this: between that which is the nucleus of the atom and the electron haze, it's filled with information, energy, love, and intelligent design. Difficult to explain how this manifests itself to your reality, but that is indeed the subject. So we'll start slow and easy. There it is, my friends, a rose. Imagine it. A beautiful rose. This one's red. And you don't like it. You don't like the thorns, perhaps. Maybe you don't even like the color, perhaps. And you say to yourself, I'd like it a lot better if it was a daisy. But it's a rose. Now, in single-dimensional digit thinking, or law 3D, the scenario is this: it's too bad you've got a rose when you wanted a daisy. Because it'll always be a rose, you know. And if you could look at the seed that the rose grows from and regerminates from, it'll always be a rose. Too bad about the rose, you might say. And so the consensus of thinking and the actions around it are this: it will always be a rose, therefore I will never be able to change it. Now consider for a moment a multi-dimensional scenario where the master gardener visits the seed. Imagine for a moment that the master gardener can tell that which is the seed to systemically alter the information of what it is. And so that the next time the cells start to divide, the thorns drop off. And the color changes. And maybe, even maybe, a daisy grows instead. And what would you call this? And the answer is a miracle. And that is how you define things that look out of the purview of your dimensional reality. I want you to start looking at these things differently. I want you to start seeing information that is multidimensional as energy. A tremendous amount of what you just call energy is only information. It leads us to the next phase of this teaching. For now we give you a discovery on the planet that has been made, that is being used. And the discovery is this: that you can address the cells, that is to say, the DNA portion of the human body, to change its informational structure. Not to belabor an issue, but you must remember what the scientists discovered about DNA. 5% of it is chemical, protein-encoded, gene-producing engine. 95% seems to do nothing. So what you have is this: a DNA structure, one DNA loop that has 3 billion chemicals in it, and 5% is the engine of the biological race car called the human being. And 95% is the driver. It's a consciousness. It's energy. It's information. And it's huge. And if you could change the information in those DNA parts, what would you say to them? Well, let me give you an example of something that's already been done. Let us say you're born with a deformed heart. Here is a heart that is not operating properly. The valves don't fit. And let us say that that is who you are, a red rose with thorns. And so in your reality, you're going to die sooner. You will not operate well. You may be on drugs when you're older, and you'll always have a deformed heart. You might ask the obvious question: since all of the organs rejuvenate many times over your life, why is it systemically that those stem cells are given information to continue rejuvenating a broken heart? Why does it stay deformed? And here's the answer: because the information stays static. Without something to change the energy of the information within the systemic system of the human body, it will always repeat what it has. The rose will always be the rose, and the thorns will always grow there. What if you could literally change the information in the 90% of your DNA? What if you could change not only the information systemically, but even subconsciously as to who you are and why you're here? They're starting to learn how. Addressing the information energetically in DNA so that the stem cells are given a pattern of perfectness instead of the deformity. And as the heart then starts to regenerate, as all organs do, slowly it becomes a functioning heart and the valves fit. And you think that's science fiction. I'm telling you, it's being done now. For on the planet, multidimensional inventions are starting to occur. There will be many more, pushing the envelope of your believability and changing physics. You've seen this, and you don't even know you've seen it. I'll ask you some other questions that you haven't really thought about. We brought these up before, and now we can discuss them more fully. Why can a starfish grow back an arm and you cannot? Because the programming in your body, in your DNA, in the information, the race driver driving the car has been instructed that those kinds of things only are to be done in the womb. And the instructions are always that way, and they repeat every time a cell divides. There'll come a day when you can change the instructions and you'll be able to grow back a limb. All of the chemistry is there. It's not that hard. But the instructions say you can't. And so they don't grow back. Imagine the race car driver in a splendid machine that can go for so long with instructions that he can only turn left. That's what a race car driver does, you know. What if you straighten out the racetrack and suddenly you got a left-hand only driver? What happens to the driver when the racetrack straightens out and he doesn't know how to do anything but make left turns? You got to change the information that he has. And that is what is being done. When the spinal cord is severed, there is chemistry that races to the place of the severing, so it won't grow back. Did you know that? There is a hormonal, proteinal structure that actually keeps it from growing back. How does that serve humanity? Well, it doesn't. Nerves are designed to grow back. And they don't. Did you know they even have addresses, color codes? They can find each other in the dark and grow back. And they don't. Because built into the race driver's information is not to grow back a spinal cord severing. There'll come a day when you can reprogram the systemicness. Stem cells exist everywhere in the human body, alive and well. They are what pattern what happens. Chemically, they are responsible for a human that is predisposed to disease. And that predisposition will be then carried to the child. And the imprint and the energy and the information of the 90% will continue and continue and continue unless it's reprogrammed. Unless the information is given to it to become different. It's not chemical. It's energy. It is multi-dimensional energy. New technology to reprogram pieces and parts of the body. Do you know what this means? There are women in the room who respond to this, who carry a gene that their ancestors carried and that they carry and that their children will carry on predispositions to certain kinds of weaknesses. And when you can rewrite your genetic print, none who follow will have it either. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Your children and your children's children will only have the reprogramming. They will not have the original information. Energy is like that. Informational energy is like that. And there's a lot of it on the planet. There are systems on the planet that have been misunderstood for a long time. Let me give you a couple. This is controversial. You may not agree. You may not like it. But I'm going to give it to you anyway. Humans love things that go bump in the night. They love to be frightened. They love to be scared. They love movies that scare them. And they love haunted places. Have you seen the upsurge in the interest of haunted places? Now let me tell you what they are and why they work the way they do. And now we get into the power of the information of the Akash. Human consciousness carries an imprint which affects the planet. And we have told you this from the beginning, 21 years of it. Human consciousness is what is going to change the planet. Human consciousness is information. It is information that you develop based upon what you think. And it's powerful. Human consciousness actually goes into what we have called the crystalline grid of the planet, which is a multi-dimensional grid. You can't see it. It holds energy. It holds information. When the planet is measured for vibration, it is the crystalline grid that is measured. And the crystalline grid only has on it what humans have put there. An interdimensional record of thought, of lifetimes, of happenings. And here's what I'm going to tell you. In certain conditions, in certain ways, a human life or an interaction of multi-lives together in a scenario that is profound for whatever reason of its profundity will create an imprint in a place. It's information and energy that will replay itself over and over and over like a recording tape in 3D. It's a haunted house. Did you know that? And here is some of the things, the attributes that we may not prove it to your psyche, but we'll give you something to think about. Did you notice that in a haunting, you have a scenario which repeats? The man comes down the stairs. The man goes up the stairs. The woman in the kitchen moves from the left to the right, sits in a chair, rocks for a while, moves away. If it involved dramatic things such as murder, the man comes down the stairs with the axe. Over and over and over and over. It's a good movie, isn't it? And that's all it is. Why does it feel the way it feels, Kryon? Because it is a result of human consciousness imprint, and you've got one too. And when you're there interfacing with it, it gives you chills, because it's real. Now science has gotten involved, as they should, and they're noticing something. The imprint, the haunting, carries scientific attributes, and they're all multidimensional. Guess what changes? Magnetics, gravitation, light, and even time. Because what it is a multi-dimensional event imprinted onto a place on the planet that plays over and plays over and plays over. Can you capture it on tape? Because it knows it's being observed. Because it's part of an imprint that is multidimensional. In a quantum sense, it knows. I can't explain that to you. You assign knowing to sentiency, that is to say, that which is intelligent in a human being. And it isn't either of those. It's a knowing that is quantum. It knows when a human being can be frightened, and it frightens it. Oh, I have more to tell you. Oh, there are things that you wouldn't believe that you can do. How would you like to get rid of that? Let's say it's in your house. Now, this may be very inappropriate, but I'll give you the answer. You're going to have to present an energy that is stronger than the imprint of the haunting. You cannot order it away. You already knew that, didn't you? No amount of huffing and puffing or calling upon God will make it different. The imprint was created by magnificent beings, sometimes seeming to do ordinary things. There's a reason for that as well. You don't know who they were. You don't know the old souls involved. You don't know who it is, really. You've got to present an energy that is stronger than the haunting. Now, what could that be? As inappropriate as it is, I will tell you. Why don't you make love in that room? That'll do it. Because that's stronger. Anyone who's been in love in the room, and there's some secrets here that I know. Beautiful ones that I know. Knows the power and the energy of humans coming together in intimacy. And the angels sing, and you create a third energy which is more powerful than the two of you. And you know it. It's sacred. It's beautiful. And it's stronger than the haunting. Maybe you didn't want to hear that today. But what about other things? What about like demon possession and all these? And I will tell you this, it's different than you think. Because there are no demons. Humanity can conjure up the most evil of the most evil, and it can do it all by itself. And you knew that too, didn't you? Because you're powerful. The pieces in God, in you, even in your mythology, are responsible for the devil himself. A fallen angel, how can that even be? It is a metaphor of what a human can do on the earth with the energy that they have. Things are not always what they seem. What about talking to the dead? And how would that work, Kryon? How could you talk to famous people when in the scheme of soul incarnation, they've already come back as others? Now, if they've already left, how can you talk to them? And the answer is this: they haven't left. Oh, the part that you think is the human left, but the imprint of them and their entire life and everything they knew, their consciousness, their wisdom, their knowledge, goes right into the crystalline grid. We've talked about this before. Can you contact famous people and get information? Yes. Will it be accurate? Of course. Because you're talking to the source. The imprint remains. You mean you're not actually talking to them? You're talking to the imprint? Let me give you something to think about. I'm going to ask a question right now. It's going to be a rhetorical one. Who are you? I have old souls in front of me. There's a woman in the room who won't wear red. And you know who you are. I'll tell you why, because it got you killed. Because that was the color of the plume on your helmet, warrior. Because you were the captain, and they knew if they would take you out, your whole regiment would be in disarray, and that's what happened. Not only kill you, killed everyone around you. You'll never wear red. You just don't like the color. It's just not for you. You shun it, don't you?
old soul, who are you? Who are you? Are you the warrior who got killed? Are you the woman who won't wear red? Are you the mother? Who are you? It is a rhetorical question because in my reality, you are a piece of God. And so when you go to that place where you wish to conjure up one who has lived before and ask them questions, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the Urkosh of a soul? Are you talking to that which is alive or dead? I will tell you, none of those things are accurate because you don't really know. It's even more magnificent than that. Can you ask Aunt Martha where the treasure was buried? Yes! And she'll know because you're talking to the Aunt Martha imprint. And she'll know. Now, if you ask Aunt Martha, how are things on the other side? She'll say, beautiful. What's it like over there? Lovely. No, give me some specifics. I love you. She doesn't know. Aunt Martha knows what Aunt Martha knows. You think of it in singularity, and it's not. It's powerful, it's real, and it's there to be accessed. It's multidimensional, and those with gifts can access the wisdom of the ancients. Go back and ask them what they knew. Go back and ask them how it felt. Go back and ask them where the treasure is buried. You're going to see some of this. And those in the places of magnificence on this planet, wearing the costumes of spirituality and the heads of state and religion, will call it evil and will call it occult, not understanding that you are moving into a multi-dimensional state, appropriate, accurate, true, usable, correct, helpful. All of those things. Does that make sense to you? Let me give you a concept, and this will be the last one. I've saved the complicated one for last. That's my favorite one. We haven't done this before, my partner, so get it right. I want to show you how time works. And I can't. Because the reality of the complexities of multidimensionality preclude the human being's ability to understand it. It's simply not teachable. So I will metaphorize it and give you it in its simplest form, which is only a fraction of its reality. Time. We mentioned today that it is a singularity for you. There's only one of them. There's no multiple times. There's only one. And you're on one track on the planet. You're all on the same track. That is a singularity. It only goes one speed. It always has for your life. It doesn't move. The truth of it is it moves all the time. Another truth you don't understand is that each of you can step off the track and create a faster or slower one. You don't know that either. How do we explain this? So let me singularize it and pretend you're all on the same track for a moment. That's what you think anyway. That's easy. And I want you to build a track, a train track, which is time. I want you to put an engine upon it which goes in one direction very slowly, and that's you and your life. I want you to make the train track, however, go all the way around the earth. Now, to your perception, because you can only see to the horizon, the train track goes straight. The truth of the matter, it goes all the way around the earth, and you're looking at it behind you. Create that kind of time for a moment. Now that puts time in a circle. Now that is confusing because it's a conundrum for you. In 3 dimensions, you cannot put time in a circle. It is in a circle. Because it's in a circle, however, take a look at some of the attributes that are confusing to you. Let us say your lifetime takes about 30 meters. Not very long on this track that goes around the earth, is it? So you never have to really worry about meeting your past, do you? But let's pretend for a moment you could. What would happen if you drove that engine around the earth? Eventually, you would be running over the energy of what used to be, wouldn't you? In the same way of thinking, if you went around the earth several times, eventually you might be also running over what might become. Suddenly you have an attribute of time you haven't thought about. If it's in a circle, it means the future affects the present. And you think the future hasn't happened yet. It hasn't in 3D. It has in a quantum sense. Now, I'm giving you information right now, and I'm giving it to you this way because there are scientists looking at it in that way. Is it possible that the future could give you energy and information now? Think of this train track for a moment, and let's get more complicated. It's got layers now. Every time the train goes around it, which is a human life, things change. What if it was humanity in that engine? Now you have the past, present, and the future of everything that's ever happened on one train track in a circle. Now you have a situation where you could stop the train, dig down in the track, and maybe if you had the ability, pick up something that either hasn't happened yet or happened before. I didn't expect you to understand it. Only listen to it. Because that's what's happening. Let's complicate it. Let's say this track has to go up some hills and down some valleys. And the hills and the valleys are always the same. If you were smart enough and had a system that understood this time, you could create bumps where it might be difficult or easy and actually put them on a map. You might even call them time fractals. And you might be right. And every time you hit that place in time, whether it was in the future or the past, you got a hill or a valley. And I want to tell you what's happening at this moment, dear human being. I just gave you the simplest way I can give you the attributes of multidimensionality when it comes to time. You are visiting potentials that in your mind have not happened, but in a quantum sense have. You are receiving a vibrational increase so that you can look at the track of time and select where you want to go. You are looking at the potentials of the quantumness of vibrational shift and creating a culture that is going to go beyond what you think it could go, because it's going to fly in the face of all prophecy. Because prophecy is based on one track that does one thing over and over in 3D. And as soon as you start to become multidimensional, information becomes energy. And in that track of time is information of the potentials. Okay, I'll tell you, nobody asked. Except the ones who are asking. It would seem like I've just turned a page Because there's someone in here who wants to know what a crop circle is. And so I'll tell you, it's a good thing you ask. It's an energy stamp from the future. How about that? Now you don't know anything more than you did before. Not a future that you went through. A future that has such a grand potential and a quantum state that is one with everything. You've already lived it. You're in an entangled state with that which you think has not happened, but which has happened so grandly, you already have peace on earth. And 21 years ago, I showed it to my partner so grandly. He can't deny it. It's his reality. And there are things in the room you can't deny, because there are realities of you putting lives together, healing bodies that you've already done. That's how grand it is. You're in an entangled state with a reality that's outside of your dimensional perception. Hard to teach, hard to understand, but easy to feel. Easy to feel. Imagine the solution is upon you. Imagine those things which you're planning already completed. Imagine yourself looking backwards and saying, "Now that wasn't too hard, was it?" Imagine the most perplexing things you've brought to the table today over with. How do you feel about it? And human being, if you can take a breath of release and look at it like I can, you are becoming quantum. And you've just created it. Congratulations. Now go from this place in your three-dimensional way and walk through the steps that you've already done. And that's my message. Information is energy. In a multi-dimensional state, all things are possible. You come here to listen to a thing like this, old soul, you wouldn't have missed this. And I'm not talking about this meeting, I'm talking about this life. How many times have you lived waiting for this? What do you think the wisdom factor is in your Akashic record? If you've lived and lived and lived and lived and lived, how about that track of time? How many layers does it have for you? What about going in, drilling down, and picking up the wisdom of your ancients? Because many of you are your own ancestors. It's about time you started seeing it in that way. My partner says, leave differently than you came. He got that from me. Do it. Do it. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. And I say that every time. It means that which is multidimensional. For still misunderstood on this planet is magnetics. Not understood is one term, misunderstood is another. For it is a quantum attribute of your reality. One of the few that spills over into your life on an everyday way. And I am in service in a quantum way to you. Relax for a moment. A message that's never been given in this fashion before is about to be given. I want my partner to go slow. The message is multifaceted, and it's one of power. It's one of history. And there are many things to read into this, even beyond the words that will be spoken this day. I speak to an audience that is larger than that which is in the room. For there are many who are listening now and reading. I know the potential of the eyes on the page, the ears that are here. And although there may be 100 or so of you here, there's thousands who will listen. To me, they are listening now. To me, they are reading now. I call the message this day the end of history. And it's not a message of doom. Take it in a linear fashion or take it in a quantum fashion. If you take the title in a linear fashion, you might be frightened. It sounds like the end of time. If you take the title in a quantum fashion, we are saying it is the end of historic energy. There's a shift happening on the planet. We're going to come back to that statement in the end. And for me to do this correctly and appropriately, I may offend some because of the history energy that is inbred in some of you who have been taught a certain way. And I ask you to be patient with this, my message, to become unified with me as I give it. For I want to take you back and explain some things to you. To paint a picture, moving around in historic times, I want to go back to Abraham. The father of monotheism, Abraham, is where we like to actually look at the history of what you would say modern spiritual belief. For it is the way the world thinks. Oh, there were many before him. Some of you are Lemurian and you know. But Abraham represents to the earth the beginning of what you would call the major religions on the planet. And I want to give you the history of what happened. And I want you to look at it carefully. I want to honor Abraham, born in Ur, which is now part of modern Iraq. And I want to honor his sons, not all born of Sarah. And the one I wish to speak of is Ishmael. Abraham is Jewish, great Jewish prophet. Ishmael is his son. There's no way that you could say Ishmael was not Jewish, for he is, even to this day. Ishmael was born in Hebron, very Israeli. Ishmael is a Jew. He fell from favor even with the Jewish people early on. And Ishmael became that which is the ancestor of all Arabs, seen as such. And if he was Jewish, so were his ancestors. And so you have the Arabs with Jewish blood, that of Abraham, flowing through them. But early on, they cast him out. And so although you had the one God and the monotheism, and you had the principle of the love of God and the unity of God, there was a split. The truth was mixed with untruth. And even to this day, there would be 1 billion human beings who would say it was Ishmael, not Isaac, who was almost sacrificed at the Temple Mount. And what is the truth there? Maybe it's a metaphor for both. Human beings are not built to unify. In an old energy on the planet of those days, and even the days that you were born in, the energy laid upon you to separate, not unify. And that is why they call it the old energy. Oh, there were wise men and women who knew better. But it is the old energy that separates and divides. Let me tell you about Muhammad. Muhammad, the prophet. Muhammad, who is of the lineage of Ishmael, who is of the lineage of Abraham. Muhammad was a Jew. And that was his lineage, but not necessarily his culture. But remember the lineage. Muhammad had a beautiful, beautiful meeting. More than one. With an angelic presence. The angels talked to humanity. But how many of you have put together that most of the angels that ever talked to a human being talked to Jews? Like Muhammad, like Moses, like Jesus, like Abraham. Well, this was part of the setup of history. Part of what makes the Jewish lineage more important. And we have spoken of before, as go the Jews, go earth. There is something there to look at, and it is going to change. And Muhammad's information from the angel was this: unify the Arabs and give them the God of Israel. And he did. And he did. And the information he had was beautiful, written down after he was gone, about the love of God. Muhammad the prophet was a unifier, not a separatist. And then there was Jesus. Long before Muhammad, Jesus the Jew, responsible for what you would call Christianity today. All of his disciples were Jewish. The rock, Peter, who started the church, was Jewish. And we tell you these things to show you there is a unity here. Perhaps there is a reason, dear ones, why the 12 layers of DNA have Hebrew names. It's an honor of the masters and the lineage, including that of Muhammad, of Ishmael, of Isaac, of Abraham, and of Jesus. All of them. The original spiritual language, oh, you might say, well, there was Sumerian, there was Lemurian. No, we're speaking of a language of today, spoken today, which is of a pure lineage of the masters who walked the planet. And what did they do with it? All of the information from all of these masters, so different was the information, culturally specific was the information, and what did they do? They went to war. Because humans separate things. They don't put them together. And there is the one God, the one creator inside, looking at humanity, going to war with each other over ideology about whose God is best when there's only one. And that's ancient history. And it's thousands of years old. Now it would occur to some to say it is human nature. Therefore, this is what happens with humans. And it will repeat itself over and over. And that is the energy of history. Bathed it is in the soup of human nature, which some say never changes. And it will happen yet again and again and again. And I'm here to tell you, dear ones, that it isn't. Because something is happening on this planet that will end history. It's going to end the energy of history. In this earth today, those who were born in Israel are taught from birth how to dislike and distrust all those around them. At this time in history on this earth, those around them from birth are taught how to hate the Jews. Carefully taught. And in this they are proud, because it is the lineage of their ancestors and they want to follow historic protocol. They want to stay separate. And I want to tell you that that's changing. Oh, it's changing. It's changing in the places you don't expect. It's changing in Jerusalem. It's changing in Iran. And the children are waking up and saying, tell me again why I should hate them. They did what? When? And that wasn't them, that was their ancestors. Tell me again, because I don't feel it. And that's what they're saying. And their parents are shaking their heads. And they're saying, do as we say. And the children are saying, no. I am not going to, and neither are those around me. And it's making a difference on this planet, and it is not being recorded. It is not being reported. Your media has no idea what to do with it, and it doesn't seem to even be news to them. And yet it is one of the greatest energies this planet is seeing. And I'm here to tell you it's real, and it's happening under the hood, you might say. Oh, there are other things I'd like to report to you. Let's talk about Europe. Eastern and Western Europe. Look at the history. I want you to look at history. What do you know about them? What were you taught about them? American? You had to learn all those dates and numbers. You sit in a country that's barely 200 years old, and you had to memorize all the battles and all those conquerors and all those armies. The 1400s, 1300s, all the way to the present day, they conquered each other on a regular basis. They warred with each other. When they got tired of that, they conquered other continents. The small country of Spain responsible for conquering South America, Middle America, North America. Millions today are speaking their language. who never did before they arrived. Armies of Napoleon spreading across that part of Europe, so much of it conquering everything in its path. There are some cities, even today in Europe, that still don't know which country they belong to because the borders kept changing so much. Now, that's history. I want you to look at it carefully. And there would be those who say, this is what men do. They create borders and cultures and they go to war. 50 years ago, the energy started to arrive. Oh, the alignments go slow, dear human being, but it was here. It was starting. It was beginning. You start to look at some of those who founded some of the institutions that you have today, who are clear thinkers. Some of them are not even here. 50 years ago is when it began, really. A little more than that. 50 years ago, something happened in Europe and you didn't hear much about it. Some very clear thinkers got together after World War II and said, if we don't do something different and out of the box of thinking, it's all going to happen again. Because this is what we do. Even the young country called America was involved. America almost split themselves before that, because that's what men do. And so they formed an idea. And let me tell you what it was. What if we got all the countries who wanted to, in mostly Western Europe and perhaps some eastern parts, to agree to become a collection of country states? And if we start this now and go at it slowly, we could eventually have a system where the borders come down and there's no checkpoints and no passports. And they would all trade evenly together, and for that to happen, we may have even a common currency. It may be like the European United States. And they were laughed at. And they were put down by so many who said, no, that's not what we do. We have too many different cultures. There's some with strong currencies, there's some with weak currencies. There's too many objections. Imagine going from one country to another without being inspected at the border. I mean, who are you to suggest something of this nature? And they said, we are unifiers. And we think it's a good idea. 50 years ago. And today, you have the European Union of States. More all the time. And the borders are gone. And the checkpoints are missing. And their currency, called the euro, is the strongest currency on earth. Stronger than yours. Now let me tell you what did that. It's a consciousness shift that even 50 years ago was here, that through these two generations slowly allowed for free thinkers to unify things that had never been unified before. And let me tell you something, they'll never conquer each other again, because history ended at that moment. In the Eastern Bloc, where there is still to this day very little unity, if you interview the consciousness of those, they will say, history will again repeat itself. We are victims of it. It's only a matter of time. They don't feel it because there's very little unity yet. But they will. There are some others who are starting to feel not a unity between countries, but a unity of spirituality, even in their own culture that they were never allowed to have before. Of free thinking. It's new. There are those who are standing on podiums and in pulpits and they are saying, history is ended. It's the end of suffering. It's the end of dictatorships. It's the end of those who would put us in a low place. Instead, it's the beginning of capturing who we are. And although they don't say it in the words that we would say it, they are discovering the Creator inside, that which is the unity of God. And who would have thought this would have happened? The United States is what it is because 200 years ago, the founders said, let us make a group of state countries without physical borders in a system that's never been tried. It's one of unity. And it had its tests, and the unifiers won. And it is why this country is what it is, and is seen and respected for what it is and what it's done. So young it is, but in the new energy it is. Declaration of Independence was channeled. Did you know that? Go read it. And feel that which is sacred inside, for it unifies and does not separate. In this day, and my partner was there to see it, that which is South America is starting to be unified. I would like to paint history for you there. There was a time when every single country had a dictator. Less than 10 years ago, they had failing economies and currencies that were worthless. Trouble and strife and killings. And now they don't. The whole continent, there's only one dictator left. What's happening? There is a move afoot that you're not going to hear about yet. And they're talking about it right now. And let me tell you what they're saying. What would happen if we took these countries and eliminated the borders? They're talking about it. In back rooms where nobody is reporting it. And they're saying, what about a plan of eventually having one currency from the top of Colombia to the bottom of Chile? And we would be strong and unified. And I will tell you, dear one, it's going to work. Let me tell you where else it's happening. In that which is the beginning of the unity of the African states. And they don't even have states yet, and they will. Because when that continent is healed, and there is no AIDS, and there is no disease, they're going to want what you have. They're going to want houses and schools and economy. They're going to want to drive to work in peace. And there is so much land there. And the population is so ready there. It'll be one of the strongest economies on the planet within 2 generations. And it's going to happen because of a unifying idea put together. Don't pull apart. In this place you call America, there is 350 kinds of Christianity today. One Savior. A lot of different ideas. What he said, what he meant. And every single one of them seems to branch off and create a church. And their history hasn't been all of that marvelous either. And Peter the rock would turn in his grave. If you knew. The time when Christians visited the villages and burned them and raped and pillaged because the village didn't believe in Christ. They called it the Spanish Inquisition. They were terrorists. You should hear this, dear ones, and I don't mean to stir your emotions, but I will say, before you label anyone a terrorist, and before you call their religion something that is evil, you should take a look at history. The Christians did it first. Or were the Jews? Humanity does this. It separates, it goes to war. It puts boxes together when the creative energy is one energy. And I'm here to tell you in this discourse that history is ending. Because that parameter of human nature is beginning to shift, and the children know it. And they're starting to see it. Put it together. Unify. And now I give you something nobody's thinking about. What do you think the internet is all about? Where all the countries on earth can talk to one another and the young people can see themselves, talk to themselves, express opinions no matter what the country does. They're doing it. And they are putting together a network of consciousness, of oneness. It's here to stay. It's part of the new energy. And the young people know it. And then there's the new age. Let me tell you something that happened 20 years ago. It's something I had to get my partner through. There were those in one of your states who labeled Kryon as the evil of the century. My partner was cast out. There was an energy that wanted to stop him before he went to the United Nations for the first of 7 times. He was in his 3rd year of channeling. There were hundreds involved. And I had to get him through it. Where he was on his knees asking me, why? And I told him, that's what humans do. And I told him they wouldn't always do it. And there would come a time when that was not in the consciousness of humanity. If an Arab and a Jew can look at one another and see the Akashic lineage and see the one family with differences that don't require they kill one another, it can happen anywhere. And it's happening now. And all of humanity, no matter what the spiritual belief, has been guilty of falling into the historic trap of separating instead of unifying. And it's starting to be different. I want to take you back to Solomon. Very wise king. Very famous story. When the 2 mothers claimed the same child. And they both pleaded with Solomon to give them the baby. It landed at the king's lap to solve, and the wise man who knew the outcome before he made the statement ordered the child cut in half, and half the child would be given to each mother. And he knew what would happen, and it did. One mother immediately turned white and said, "Give the other woman the child." And he knew who the child belonged to instantly. It was her. And how did he know? Because compassion was the wisest thing on the planet. And that says it all. It is the compassion of the wise, divine, feminine mother that is sweeping this earth as literally the Kundalini moves from one continent to another, as the earth is feeling the shift, and some are feeling desperately alone in the process, not understanding. That's what it must feel like with a computer when you turn it off and reboot it. It is the same here with human consciousness as it reboots itself into another paradigm where history is not going to control what happens next. And that's what you're feeling. And Solomon knew it. The compassion of the 33. That number which means compassion in numerology. A master number which sits upon the planet, which some call the Christed energy. The master of love. Not the savior for Christians. Jesus the Jew. Aligning with Muhammad of Jewish lineage, Ishmael, son of Abraham. You can see it. It is there. It's odd, perhaps, that the Jews will be the last ones online. They've set it up for this. And I'll tell you why the setup is so grand and so great. Because when they finally unify with themselves and with their neighbors, you will know it's a miracle. And they will too. All of them, each of them will look around. Just like the Russians did when the Soviet Union fell over all by itself without a shot, without a war. Because it no longer suited the magnificence of those that lived there. And you're going to see the same thing. When, Kryon? When it's ready. When the synchronicity is afoot. And you've got time. The energy of 2012 has been with you for 16 years as I sit here, and will be with you 20 more. That is how the alignment works, as it moves literally through the center of the galaxy equator. As the precession of the equinoxes takes its effect and you move into the station, as we say, as the train arrives, as my partner has put it so slowly, it's a 36-year window of experience, not a crosshair on December 21st. You are living in this, and you have been, New Ager. Now, there are those in here who I speak to in the room, and I want to talk to them now. Not the listener, not the reader. I want to talk to the room. I want to talk to those who sit in this energy. I want you to go away differently than you came today. I want you to go away with an activation of that which is angelic. That which is creator energy inside, that is going to give you wisdom within your spiritual belief, because not all of you here believe as the channeler does. And it doesn't matter. And so here's your test. Can you look at those here as family, even if you don't agree with them? Can you love them? You have a choice to leave this place and say, well, I'm not going to go to a meeting like that again. They're crazy. Or you can say, I'm not going to go to a meeting like that again because I don't necessarily agree with them, but I love them. And they're welcome in my house. And if they want to come to dinner, it's okay. And I can joke with them and be with them and shake their hands. Might even marry one of them. Because I recognize that there is one God and there is one Creator, and we both have it inside of us. And so our ideas, differences don't separate us anymore.
They can be there, like the countries that exist next to each other without borders. The cultures are still there. They still exist. They're still their own country. But now they're together. And they're never going to war with each other again. Ever. They can't. They got one currency. Unification does that. Solomon knew it. The secret is compassion. Dear ones, leave this place compassionate for one another. You get home and you turn on the television and you see someone you don't like because they're politically not of your party. Here is your challenge for the day. Can you love them? Can you see the Creator inside? Anyway, can you see them playing out a game of how things will settle in this country so that you're forced to work together in unity? Did any of you see that? Forced to work together, forced to compromise, forced to unify and not separate. When you see it in politics, you'll know it's real. And that's what we're telling you. Look for it. It's there. Old energy leaves slowly. But there'll come a day when the old energy is not there anymore. And it may take a generation. And some of you say, I won't be here then. And I tell you, oh, yes, you will. Because you're not going to miss the finale. You're not going to miss the finale. And I'm not going to be able to hold you back. And there will be a turnaround time for you which is faster than anything in history, because history doesn't matter, even spiritual history. You're going to arrive and leave quick. We can't keep you home anymore. You always come back to earth. Old soul. And that's why we love you the way we do. Old soul. I want to wash your feet now for what you're doing with the planet, old soul. Take the opportunity to love someone, to see them quantumly, to see them as many, not one, to see their lineage of the planet, to see them as important, like you. And that is the message for this day, that you would unify that which is your soul with that which is other souls. And I'm going to ask you something now. In this room, at this time, I'm going to end the channel. But I don't want the energy to change. You sit in a grand place that was built for spiritual thinking. In the sanctuary of this church, there have been healings, epiphanies. The very wood that is around you has seen it. The elements in the room know it. It is a room that never had to be warmed up when you walked in, and some of you felt it. So here's what we ask. Let us not change this energy. And when the congregation shows up tomorrow morning, which is Sunday, let them feel what you have left here in this room. Family, you don't know them and they don't know you, but you do. Can you unify with them in a Unitarian way? Can you unify with them? When I say the words, and so it is, hold the energy. Leave at your own pace. Stay seated if you wish for a little while. Leave in quietness. Take your socialization outside.
let this place remain a sanctuary until you return tomorrow. And so there is no applause, there is no noise, only unity, only the love for one another, only quantum thinking about what is before this planet, if you wish it, dear one. Do you feel different about the puzzles before you now? I hope you do. Solvable, every single one. Every single one. And so it is.